You're listening to Making a Living Show. I'm Roby Levy.
Hi, I'm Ryan Espersen. I'm a Caribbean historical archaeologist, and I also make antique repurposed brick lighting for a living.
Ryan Espersen is the creator behind Espersen & Son Heritage Company. Inspired by his day job as an archaeologist, Ryan repurposes antique bricks from the mid-17th to early 20th centuries. He breathes new life into them, creating one-of-a-kind lamps and planters imbued with a sense of history. Here's my chat with Ryan Espersen. Who are you, and what do you make for a living?
All right, I'm Ryan Espersen. I'm a Caribbean historical archaeologist by trade. When I'm not doing that, on the side, I repurpose antique bricks into interior lighting.
How in the world did you get started doing that?
Well, I wish I had a better story with that. The short version is it was a random thought in the shower. The longer version is that as an archaeologist, when you're excavating industrial sites, like I've worked on a lot of things like sugar plantations and indigo plantations in the Caribbean, and especially when you run an archaeology center or you're working with others, you're faced with artifact storage. And what happens with that is you're basically taking everything you excavate and you process it in the lab, and then it goes into once it's put into the database, then it goes into storage for an indefinite period of time, 2 years, 5 years, 50 years, basically waiting for someone to come and study it somewhere down the line. But when you're confronted with things like an entire building you're excavating, say like a sugar plantation, you're confronted with thousands or tens of thousands of bricks. You simply cannot store tens of thousands of bricks for one inside, putting a building into another building. But you also are getting redundant information essentially after a few bricks if they're all the same. So what happens is they stay there on a site, weathering the elements, and that's it. By taking something that would otherwise be discarded, such as a brick, and repurposing it in a way that provides an alternative means for the heritage to be promoted and preserved, I think is a much better alternative than just leaving them out to the elements. So that's sort of what led me on to the idea of repurposing them into, say, like interior lighting.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to say that you're going to take something that's going to be trash or just going to wither away and become useless and use it for something else. But most people would take bricks and use them as bricks. Why did you take them and start using them as lights?
I've seen, I've had like somewhat of an interest in, say, like a steampunk aesthetic and things, and I've been noticing a lot of people were doing lights using like half-inch black steel pipe, for instance, or some people were doing just taking a chunk of wood and throwing in a light socket and an Edison bulb, and then you see those sold all around the world. I was looking for, say, like a different means, something that was not done, that was underused, and with a wide window for creativity. So oddly enough, bricks were simply not really being used for interior lighting. I think I've seen a small handful of examples that were generally the same style online, and so I took that, I ran with it, and I've got at least 8 to 10 different varieties of lamps I'm making with that, and opportunities for many more.
I'm curious how you knew enough about lighting to even figure out that you're going to take a light and you're going to stick it in. Like, do you have an electrical background? Did someone teach you this?
This is something I slowly taught myself. I've had some experience with some wiring and so forth in the past. I worked as a forest firefighter for 11 years in northwestern Ontario, and especially in slow seasons, you learn a lot of odd jobs. Say, like if you have experience roofing, suddenly you're re-shingling roofs, across all the fire bases, or you're fixing the plumbing in a remote base and things like that. So you do pick up little odd things like that. Like I picked up a bit of wiring. So then I slowly progressed with that, and I have appointments this week for ETL certification on lamps. So everything should be good to go for commercial resale and everything too. So it's also out of necessity too. After moving from the Caribbean to the Lower Mainland in December 2018, I knew the job market here for archaeology, let alone something as specific as I do, it wasn't exactly great. So two things I did. I made two companies. I made my own private company that does contract archaeology in the Caribbean. That's now been put on hold with all the travel closures and closed borders and so forth. But also with the other company to repurpose discarded material cultural heritage. So then in this case, yeah, focus a lot more on bricks because they're so readily available here in the Lower Mainland, for instance. And there used to be it was something like almost 100 brick companies that were operating out of the Lower Mainland and Vancouver Island by the late 19th century. So there's quite a history here in itself here with brick manufacturing.
Do you see a brick and then see the light it could be, or do you have an idea of the light and the fixture that you're trying to make, and then go out and find suitable bricks in order to make them?
Yeah, well, two things. Generally, when I see something I'm interested in and I want to pursue it, very quickly I think of, I suppose, like a sort of like branches on a tree or links in a chain of possibilities that extend beyond that, and then what those possibilities extend to. And I suppose that's just how I stumbled on the idea of making lighting out of brick in the shower and so forth. But when it comes to finding them itself, that's there's a couple ways of doing it here. For one, like locally, especially in the summer when people are renovating their home or digging up their yard, or there's building demolitions. There's all these bricks that are advertised as giveaways on, say, like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. So that's just a matter of going there and picking them up. And sometimes there's a lot of work with it. Sometimes they're covered in paint, and you have to strip the paint off, and they're covered in mortar, especially lime mortar, and that could be quite a lot of work just even to clean them up into a suitable condition to make things with. On top of that, then there's the bricks you pick up to begin with. So, like I said, there is something like 100 brick companies here by the late 19th century. So that not only means there's a lot of different stamps on bricks. So what I try and do is I try and collect bricks that have a company's name or company's maker's mark on them, because that provides someone with much more ready connection to the history and heritage behind this brick than, say, just a plain brick. So with that, for instance, you can trace back the company, when they were founded, where they're operating, what kind of bricks they made, what their output was. But also, because styles change through time, you can also date the brick based on, say, like how their logo changed through time. So you can get even more specific with that.
Do you find your customers are interested in knowing that history of each piece? Are there people who are interested in certain times?
Yes and no. Some people just see, some of the pieces and just say, "Well, cool," which is fine. Uh, for me personally, I do this more to connect people to their heritage. So as going along with my work as an archaeologist and someone who does public outreach with cultural heritage. So for me, the interest is, say, I'll have people come up and see like a Claiborne brick. Claiborne was one of the last brick factories to close down in the Lower Mainland. They're out of Abbotsford, and now the old brick plant is torn down, and now it's it's going to be houses made of sticks. Like more townhouses and things, just like I live in here. So someone will see the Claiborne brick and oh yeah, my grandfather used to work for Claiborne. Oh, this is so interesting. Oh man, he would love this brick. So I've made sales like that, or I've had people from some of the Gulf Islands come, and there used to be several brick factories scattered across those islands. Some only operated for a couple of years, and they'll come up and say, "Oh yeah, we've got beaches full of these bricks, but the people that live there love them. Everyone has these bricks in their homes, and I've never seen anything like this before. If you could just turn this into lighting, they would love this. Oh, I have to get your name. I have to tell them." So for me, that's really what drives this. Is not someone coming up because they think it looks nice, but because someone is coming up because it provides a connection to tangible history.
What is your ultimate goal? What are you hoping to achieve with this work?
For me, it's providing a means for local residents to connect to their own history, either locally or within the greater region. So, for example, what I'm doing here in the Lower Mainland is taking bricks as much as I can from the Lower Mainland or Vancouver Island and marketing them that way. I do, for example, have some bricks from Medicine Hat in Alberta. There used to be several brick factories out in Alberta. So when I do shows in Alberta, I'm going to try as much as I can to get those Alberta bricks. And when I do like a show at Edmonton or Calgary, I'll have Alberta bricks. In Toronto, I would try and do the same thing. I have on Saba, the island where I lived for 7 years, I also sell some table lamps made from repurposed Dutch ISIL brick. which dates from the 17th and 18th centuries. So I have those sold locally there as a means to tie the local history through a means that it otherwise wouldn't be shown through. Because no one really, you're not going to go into a museum and maybe see a pile of bricks and get, people drawn in simply on that means, right?
So what's the actual process then of turning a brick into a light, into a fixture, into something that wants to be in someone's home?
Well, of course, there's the cleaning. Sometimes you get lucky and say that the bricks are part of a walkway in someone's yard. They were just placed in the ground, and then there's really no cleaning required other than scrubbing off some dirt. If there's paint, the paint has to be stripped. If there's mortar, of course, the mortar has to be taken off. So, of course, there's that. Then there's selecting bricks depending on what piece I would like to make. So, on each of my pieces on my website, I have several options that people can select depending on what they want from their table lamp. So, for example, on say the simple ones where it's essentially a brick with a light socket and a switch and a cord, you can select the brick company that you would like for your base brick, and then you can also select a condition. So there's, for example, like a clean condition, or a lot of bricks were used in chimneys, so they've collected a lot of soot. So there's very charred elements to those bricks. Other times there were bricks that were warped or were basically malformed during production, so they're probably never really used in a building and just discarded. But to me, some of them look absolutely fantastic, and other people might share that too. So I'll make bricks, say, out of warped bricks, or lamps out of warped bricks, for example. So if they're not made to order, then sometimes I'll just select a certain brick based on an aesthetic and then match it with, say, a socket or a cord. And make something that is not only visually appealing to, but also then has a history behind it. So once I select those, then a lot of work happens with a diamond hole saw.
You just saw my face. I went, "What the hell's a diamond hole saw?"
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just like a hole drill. So if you want to drill a round hole into something, that's all it is. So it's the same principle, I suppose. If you want to mount a doorknob into a door, you drill a circular hole and it goes through. But of course, when you're drilling through something like ceramic, you need something harder. So this is coated with diamond dust, and then you drill it underwater. So I do my measurements, do a little dot on the brick, and then I place the brick basically in a big Tupperware container. And then I have a drill press, so I get like a nice, perfect straight angle over top of the brick, and then I just slowly drill through the brick with the diamond hole saw. And that's how I make the holes. And from there, generally speaking, I would secure the socket with what's called IPS pipe. It's like a type of threading, like a threaded pipe that's used in making interior lighting. I would secure it into the brick, and then it's just a matter of wiring up the electrical cord and then running that through.
You make it sound so easy.
It can be time consuming. There's a lot of steps involved, and sometimes you realize you went too far ahead, and then you have to take everything apart and then do it once again. So it happens now and then, or sometimes you're drilling through a brick and then you break the brick. So then, better that happens at the beginning than at the end.
Yeah, I can imagine it's a little disheartening after you've just taken a diamond brick bath. So once these things are completed, how are you marketing these? How are these finding their way to people?
With the marketing, it took a little while to get some footing on that. I have experience, say, like promoting history and promoting museums and archaeological sites and things when it comes to selling a product. That's a bit of new territory for me. So for me, the marketing, I thought a natural entry point to it is like I said, again, is connecting people to their history through material objects. So marketing in that aspect, I thought was the easiest. So one thing that you start to learn along the way is there's what you want to do and there's what you like, but is it what your customers like, or is it what your customers are going to think when they see it? So, for example, on one of the last trade shows I did, I built this. For the past few trade shows, I've had this cart that I built. So I went again to online and found some old wheels from, say, the turn of the 20th century. They're all rusted. They've got this, rusted spokes on them, and then they've just got a solid strip of rubber instead of like an inflatable tube. So I placed that onto an axle and kind of built this old style like fruit cart basically. And I had all my lamps and everything onto there, and people love the cart. Oh, this is a great cart. Oh man, you're selling light bulbs. Oh, this is fantastic. And then no, I'm selling table lamps, and they have light bulbs. But I was hearing this again and again and again that, oh, you're selling light bulbs. And I had to tell people, no, but the thing is, they're not wrong.
Right. The light bulbs are part of it.
Exactly. That's me. That's my presentation. So I've had to make a few changes to that along the way. Like another example is when I first started my website. Um, it's one thing to go on to like Wix or Shopify and just do the standard package they give you and all the suggestions you can have one done in less than an hour, but it's not really going to look that much different than say almost any other website out there, whether it be like a blog or someone selling clothes. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to take a little bit more of a unique approach, and I'm going to make this like late 19th century newspaper ads for table lamps. So so with all these subscriptions I had for my own research, like newspaper archives, I was going through local newspapers for Victoria from the late 19th century, Vancouver, Winnipeg, and pulling out all these ads for old table lamps. And back then, this is when houses were starting to be wired, and electricity was being introduced. So, it'd have ads that say, 2,000 homes now in Vancouver now have electric light. Upgrade your home with an electric table lamp and things. So I would actually start doing that on my website. I would have like little taglines like that, and then with the I would also use the kind of language of the day to describe and promote each table lamp.
How was the response to that?
I think people were either left scratching their heads or wondering if English was not my first language.
Yeah, there's a fine line between doing something really creative and clever and actually achieving the goal of selling the bloody thing.
For sure.
So in terms of that, then have you kept your website as is, or have you've gone a different route?
I've gone a different route, a little bit, quite a bit more modern, and then also, with still keeping some of the wit, and maybe I just really toned down the 19th century elements into it. Some of them are there, but I basically removed all references to promoting electric light, and
as a new invention.
As a new invention in capital letters, yeah.
So are people mostly finding you then by way of social? Are you doing markets? How are they finding you?
I get bursts of people visiting the website basically when I make Instagram posts, because I can follow it not only on my Etsy page, but also on my website too. But after a while, I find they're the same people. I find the most variety will come from markets. But then, of course, for me, that took a while to find out what market suited me best. And of course, that was a complete means of trial and error. I started off at farmers markets and very quickly learned that you're not going to sell table lamps besides somebody selling vegetables. And so then I moved on to other ones like this is in Port Langley, for example. So there's another one I went to called the Langley Makers Market. But then I was finding the people attending that, for one, aren't because Fort Langley is very busy already. And the people strolling through there are mainly strolling through because, oh, there's a lot of people here. I don't know what this is for, but I'm going to go through anyway. So the people coming through aren't necessarily going because they know, say, like this is a craft market, for one, and for two, what kind of things they can expect. So for me, I found the best markets are juried markets where people pay an entry fee to attend. For one, because they know they're going to purchase products, and then for two, the people attending are guaranteed that the products are going to be like of a certain quality.
Yeah, I was going to say your products are not; these are not $5 lamps. These are not quick IKEA little something or others that are mass produced. These are one of a kind.
No, they range in price from about $75 to about $450. So the best market I've had was been Circle Craft. Because that one effectively fits as I described, and also it's a Christmas market, so people are going there to buy gifts already, and that was very successful. So I'm hoping to repeat that later this year. Of course, with everything going on with COVID-19, everything's in the air too. So,
what are you doing to try and deal with the COVID-19 reality that we've got going on right now?
I have to promote online sales as best I can. That's all we really have right now. But then also too. A lot of people are experiencing financial difficulty as well, even despite the fact that I can't do markets, but then, a lot of people aren't able to pay their rent as well. So it is very uncertain. And I suppose in that sense, it's good that this isn't my primary means of income. However, I can't leave the country either. So I can't also do work. I had work coming up, for example, 2 projects in Saba and then another one in Nevis. So those are on hold.
Who helps you with all this stuff? Is this just a one-person operation? Do you do it all? Do you market? Do you sell? Do you make it? Do you pack all the stuff up? Do you do all the shipping? Is everything being done by you?
That's correct.
That is a lot of work. How do you find the time to pull all that off, as well as having your primary responsibilities as an archaeologist?
Well, that happens all after hours. Like especially with having like an infant son, a lot of the day is taken up right now with childcare, and then I can't simply work in between that. So it has to be when he does his naps. But of course, his naps are unpredictable. So, so the only predictable time I have to get this done is essentially after he's in bed. So that's anywhere between 7:30 to 8. So yeah, I do everything I can between those times. Sometimes they make for very late nights, but it's the only way to get it done at this point.
Have you considered just stopping doing it?
Yes and no. It happens in spurts. Like if I have a market coming up, yeah, I'm certainly working quite a bit for that. I don't have to necessarily right now because the markets that I was supposed to do were all canceled. So I have quite a bit of stock already sitting down in storage. So at this point, it's not necessary. But at the same time, I can also come up with new designs and things like that. So I can make a few prototypes and then go from there rather than have to make everything quickly on a short deadline.
What if you just made 30, 40 pieces and you're just beat and you look at it, you look at another brick and say, if I see one more brick, I'm just going to shoot myself. How do you stay creative and motivated and inspired?
Normally, what I try and do is to introduce myself into new environments, or even to new music. Put myself into a different frame of mind, and then find a way to, while I'm completely distracted with that, reintroduce what I'm trying to think about, say like a new type of design for brick, or a different way to market the bricks, uh, or maybe like a different idea for the website and things like that. I find that actually works quite well, especially now with everyone else that's in this position too, with COVID-19. Under lockdown, it can be very hard to introduce yourself to a new environment when you can't leave the house. So I find music is very good for that. Or like I play guitar as well, acoustic and classical and so forth. So after I've been playing for a while, then I'll stop, come back to it, come back to my thought process with the marketing, with the brick designs, and that also works as a way to get that going too. As far as motivation, I find that once you start doing it, it snowballs. So then you look forward to doing it again because you found you can do this, or you can do that, or you thought of this new process, or you thought, oh, this looks really good. I find actually the best way to motivate is to simply do, in this sense, because once you stop doing it, then I suppose it's almost like going to the gym in a way, that after you stop going for a week, you make excuses, and then it's easier to make the excuse, and then you may find yourself not looking forward to doing it because you simply haven't done it for so long.
Sadly, I know that reality. What advice would you have for somebody who wanted to get into the brick game or the craft game in general?
Yeah, I would say find a mentor. It allows you to skip the trial and error process, and it can save you quite a substantial amount of time and money. For example, me, it took me a while to find out, they say, what the best market was, who my clientele were, advertising strategies, website design, and so forth. So yeah, that would be absolutely my first suggestion.
And if somebody couldn't find a mentor, what are some great resources for them?
Attend your markets. That's how I found mine, for example. It'll be a trial and error process for you too. But like one of my first markets, I was at I think my second or third time at the farmers market, and I was beside I forget the name of the company, but they make the soups and tubes. So they put dry soups, and then they have different flavors and so forth. And then all you do is you put it on to cook for a few hours, and you have soup, and then they keep for years at a time. And they've been doing this for 13 years. And I got great suggestions on why this market wasn't for me. I could obviously see it for myself, but then I was told why. There's what markets to attend at Christmas, some logistical tips and things for moving in, moving out. Those are also important. And then, yeah, part of it too is when you're at a market, just it's one thing to obviously talk to your customers, but talk to the vendors, because a lot of people end up doing this for the living. It's their primary employment. So Absolutely. There's resources all around you. It's really up to you to take advantage of it.
Do you find that folks that are, whether they're suppliers or vendors themselves, do you find it's a fairly forthcoming group?
Absolutely. It's despite people selling many different things and different levels of experience, it can be a pretty close knit group. At Circlecraft, for example, there's a bunch of us in our immediate surroundings. If we had to go and say use the washroom or get a drink or something or whatever, we would all watch each other's booths, and then if someone was interested, we would step in and make a sale, and then let them know, and then the money would go to them and so forth. And so it's quite nice.
Do you find you've made some real relationships, like some real connections with folks, be they local or farther apart at these markets?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you get for when the vendors, of course, you'll start to, once you get to know each other, you'll start seeing each other, at markets down the line, and then even customers like there's regulars to say art and craft shows or trade shows, and you start to see repeat people. You start even to see your own customers from before. And so that's always nice to come back with, how they were using the products that you bought, and friends that they told, and other people's reactions to how it was, say, in their house. So that's always nice to hear.
That must be really rewarding. Where can people find you?
I have my website, which is www.esheritagecompany.com. I also have, I'm also on Etsy as well, and then also on Instagram, which is at Espersen and Son Heritage.
Thank you very much for being on the show with us and sharing how you make a living.
Oh, thank you very much. All the best.
Subscribe to Making a Living Show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. Making a Living Show is brought to you by me, but if you'd like it to be brought to you by you, then become a patron of the program at makingalivingshow.com. There's a button there that will take your money and give it to me. You can find me at robylevy.com. Thanks for listening.